Episode 3. Demons Among Us. This time, there was no conversation with the clients. Their half-decayed corpses stared at the world with empty, indifferent eyes. The last words they tried to leave behind were smeared as bloody imprints on the walls of the cozy living room. They were afraid of their daughter, and now they're dead. And their child is covered in blood and staring at us with really creepy eyes. Audrey listened to the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks. In daylight, its beauty would have been mesmerizing, but at night it looked like a monster reaching out with black tentacles. It climbed up the stone ledges and sought to swallow the unfortunate village whole. I need the name. Audrey imagined that the darkness had indeed won, covering everyone in a mass of dark water. The muffled words of her colleagues barely broke through the stale air that reeked of blood and decay. She won't tell.
My name is Tina.
The client's daughter proudly sat cross-legged in the middle of the living room, ignoring the corpses around her. Her eyes gleamed feverishly. Something was clearly trying to break free from their depths, something at odds with her frozen mask of complete indifference. Did you kill your parents, Tina? The grave cold clung to Audrey's legs with sharp, unshakable talons and crept upward. Audrey could feel it seeping beneath her skin, coursing through her veins. The child's serenity in the midst of such horror was nauseating. Did she really kill them? Is she possessed after all? There was something disturbingly compelling in her pupils, something wrong, something impossible to look away from. It was as if their black void held terrible secrets, the secrets of a person who had lived many lives. How can a child evoke such emotions in me?
Did I kill? No. Call an ambulance, please.
Audrey was trying very hard to avoid looking at the corpses, but the unexpected request forced her to glance at them again. The woman lying on the floor was missing significant chunks of her flesh from her arms, abdomen, and thighs. The man's face had been gnawed off. Maggots were already wriggling in the gaping holes, indicating that the parents had been dead for some time. I'm afraid an ambulance won't be of much help here.
But then the police. Call the police.
That's a reasonable idea. Audrey's hand reached for her phone, fell, gently intercepted it. No police, Audrey. Not until she says the name. But she's already introduced herself. We need the name of the demon that possessed her. The girl pouted and frowned. How can you be sure she's really possessed? Shouldn't we at least talk to her first?
Oh, I have so much to tell you. So much.
Audrey swallowed and took a step towards the child, but Cassio placed a heavy hand on her shoulder and pulled her back behind his broad frame. All right, let's end this circus. With a nervous shrug, David broke away from the group and moved forward menacingly. I'll say every name in turn. I've got all night. You know how long the night can be, don't you, Tina? David's words had a strange effect on the girl. Her mask of indifference cracked and tears streamed from her eyes.
Please, don't hurt me, please.
The piercing scream got through the air with such a force that Audrey jumped. What are we even doing? Talk to the girl. Stop it. Stop scaring her. Audrey broke free and raised her hand in a warning gesture to keep Cassiel at bay. Whatever happened here, she's just a child and we owe it to her to listen. Fell gave David a meaningful look and shrugged as if leaving the decision to him. She won't tell you anything, Audrey. Encouraged by the prospect of being heard, the girl jumped to her feet. She glanced at Cassiel, but wisely stayed where she was.
I'll tell you everything, sweetie. Everything.
Audrey was appalled by the girl's strange choice of words, but she found the strength to continue the conversation anyway. What happened here, Tina?
A reunion of parents with their daughter. So emotional, with tears and hugs, excruciating pain, screams, and a frozen plea in their eyes. And what happened to you?
To me? The girl sniffed like a dog and squealed with delight.
Oh, how funny you are. Searching for lost faith in the lair of these monsters. You'd better choose a different path, darling. Theirs doesn't lead to God. It leads straight to hell. And there's so much lust in you. How do you even control yourself? So dirty. Do you want to wallow in sin and to spite the parents who abandoned you? Which one of these three attracts you so much? Which one do you long to surrender to?
The words were so unexpected that Audrey didn't immediately realize they were directed at her.
Poor girl, confused about herself and the whole world. Do you want to go back to your childhood and fix everything? To be the first to poison her morning cup of coffee and free your beloved spineless mom from her shackles?
Enough! The girl ended her monologue with barking, hysterical laughter. All the nasty things she said seemed so accurate. It's all right, David. She's in shock. Though it seems like I'm the only one really in shock here. David ignored the girl's hysterics, and you're not so easy to provoke. That's worthy of respect. He began to speak in a language that vaguely resembled Latin. Oh, please let me speak it. Oh! A strange prayer flowed quietly and monotonously from his lips. I'll find the sigil. It has to be here somewhere. The girl jerked towards Cassiel, but Fell's gaze pinned her in place. Better not move unless you want to lose your limbs. The threat had no effect on the girl, but it did affect the evaluator. Sigils, Latin, corpses threatening to dismember a child? What the hell? Audrey realized something. With every minute they spent in this room, it would become harder and harder to explain to other people what they had been doing here for so long. We need to call the police. Have you realized Fell is the police? Cassiel was tossing books and anything else he could find onto the floor. The girl watched his attempts with fascination and taunted him.
Keep looking, filthy spawn. My name is Legion.
Audrey couldn't pinpoint the moment when her services were no longer needed. Why are they so sure that the girl's really possessed, and not just sick? The only consolation was that no one was physically touching the child, but judging by the changing expression on the girl's face, something was clearly happening to her. She foamed at the mouth and snarled, trying to reach David.
Shut your mouth, you disgrace. You're unworthy of the knowledge your father instilled in you. He'll gut you like a pig and eat your insides.
The girl screamed in a high-pitched, hysterical voice as though she was throwing a tantrum. The child's eyes clouded over as if someone had poured ink into them. In response to David's words, the darkness came alive and flowed from the girl's eyes like a murky, dirty water.
Shut your mouth! Shut up!
Audrey could have sworn there were serpentine shadows dancing on the walls. As if tethered to her by their tails, they all began at the child's feet and spread across the room. The girl thrashed, screamed, but she couldn't move from that spot. Something held her in place, preventing her from taking a step. Her gaze, full of hatred, was directed at only one person. David. What the hell? Audrey couldn't deny it. Placebo or not, the words truly had some power over the child. Tina's body trembled, and then the trembling turned into convulsions. As if Her blood was boiling inside of her, rushing through her body in a powerful surge. Is she having a seizure? It didn't last long. At some point she grew still. Her gaze dimmed and lost all focus. With an expression of complete serenity, she fell silent and lay down on the floor. All the shadows that had filled the room disappeared. Only an oppressive silence remained. Did it work? Without a name, it only evicted the demon from the body. It didn't banish him back to hell. This time, no one stopped Audrey as she approached the child. She crouched down beside her, trying to find a pulse or feel her breathing. The girl's heart stirred under her hands and suddenly stopped. Damn it, she's not breathing. Not breathing. Audrey pressed down on the girl's chest. She tried to restart her heart, to breathe some oxygen into her, but to no avail. Cassiel attempted to calm her growing panic. It's just a shell, Audrey. Leave it. Is that how it really works? Doesn't exorcism set the soul free? Why didn't she come to her senses? What do we do now? We're going to jail. We didn't do this, so no, we're not. So where is the demon gone? Let's hope he's back in hell after all. If it really was the parents who made a deal with him, there's probably nothing more for him to do here. A cold, hopeless feeling filled Audrey's insides, but a faint glimmer of hope tried to break free. You can help her. Heal her like Mikhail did. The emotionally charged plea surprised everyone far more than the possessed child did. You... Fel stuttered and shook her head. We don't have that kind of gift, none of us do. Fel kneeled down and took over from the evaluator, continued to administer first aid. She did so calmly and methodically. The gift is too rare. Not everyone who is blessed with it can develop it to an extent that Mikhail has. I'm sorry. An ambulance is already on its way, Audrey. After a few minutes, they heard the sound of sirens, and at that moment, Audrey felt a faint heartbeat. Cassiel picked the girl up and carried her outside, without a word. David followed behind. This is just a nightmare. Possessions, demons. The cocoon Audrey had been hiding in was covered in ugly cracks. Through them, she could see an unfamiliar world, a terrifying world. It crashed like a stormy sea against seemingly unshakable foundations. It tried to break the cocoon and reveal itself to Audrey in its terrible glory. There's no limits in this world, but it is really necessary to sail so far. Another thought squirmed in her mind like a worm. Maybe if I called the police, the girl would still be alive? As if guessing what she was thinking, Fel remarked, We're lucky no neighbors came to check out the commotion. Usually we don't have time to save every bystander from the bloodthirsty possessed. Fel motioned. You managed to avoid potential casualties. Oh. Fel motioned for Audrey to follow her. She headed for the exit after the rest of her colleagues. Now we really do need to wait for the local police. How do we explain all this? With words. Which is why we need to talk to them before they enter the house and lose any desire to chat. Audrey walked around a bit, trying to calm down, but no matter how hard the fresh sea air tried to wash away the stench of the house, it didn't work. The smell of blood, decay, stepped outside with them, clinging to her nostrils. Audrey wasn't sure what to do with herself. She wandered back to the group gathered by the road. Cassiel tensed when he saw the evaluator approaching them. You're not feeling well. Given the situation, it was hard to feel well, but strangely, Audrey didn't feel like fainting. Maybe the miracle Mikhail performed has expanded my mind. I'm fine. I just don't know what to do with myself. David smiled warily and kept the conversation going. I can only imagine how many thoughts are swarming your head right now. Of course. This is my first encounter with a demon. It's a wonder I haven't lost my mind. Demons come in many forms. Some are bloodthirsty, others are so captivating that it's impossible to look away from them. But they're certainly not the kind of evil you read about in the books, not all of them. His words contradicted those instilled in Audrey by her parents.
Next, you'll tell me that demons can be good and are capable of love and have families, and that angels are evil and couldn't care less about mortals.
Ah, you've seen Supernatural then? Well, let's hope that angels are indeed good and care about humanity. Fella was lost in thought. She paid no attention to the ongoing conversation. She kept looking nervously down the road, waiting for the police. As soon as the lights of the approaching cars appeared on the horizon, David and Fel moved towards them. Audrey watched from a distance. She tried to guess how long they would all be kept in this place.
And that's if we're lucky enough to be treated as witnesses, not suspects.
David made emotional gestures as he tried to convey some information to a thoughtful-looking policeman. Two of his colleagues, probably forensic experts, entered the house silently. The policeman listened intently and nodded at every pause.
It feels like Somnus and Furious set us up with this assignment, just to get us thrown in jail.
Cassiel just shrugged in response.
It wouldn't be the worst outcome, considering the fact that those two have taken up residence in our home.
When the policeman finally approached them, Audrey braced herself for the oppressive atmosphere of an interrogation room. But the man just sighed heavily and hesitant to go inside. What did they do to deserve this? One tragedy after another. Well, you see, you hang in there. If you see anything unusual, call us right away. The policeman nodded and spoke again, not addressing anyone in particular. Thank you for coming. It's a shame it was too late. Such a close-knit family. They love their daughter so much. The man took in jittery breaths. He continued to mutter words that no one needed anymore. We can go home.
Just like that. Express condolences. I'm sorry it ended this way. I'm sure their souls are in a better place now.
Yes, of course. You're welcome to stay for the funeral if you'd like. Audrey wasn't sure how to respond to such an invitation, and she fell silent. I'll hide the fact that Tina killed her parents. It'd be too much for our small village. She's just a kid. With a quiet sob, the man wiped away a single tear with a sleeve. How could someone hit their head so hard that they start attacking people? The rhetorical question was clearly meant to go unanswered, but Audrey decided to respond anyway. If the impact damages the frontal lobes of the brain, it's possible. Simple reasoning suddenly made her want to tear her hair out. Because everything can be reasoned away, let's be honest. If Tina had brain damage, she should have been rushed to the hospital. And instead we recited prayer to her, and our stupidity could have caused her to die of a hemorrhage. How exactly did Tina get injured? An accident. The school bus overturned, almost all children died. Only Tina and one other girl, Laura, survived. She was in a coma for almost a month. The doctors told her parents to prepare for the worst, but she suddenly woke up. But what has to snap in a person's head for her to kill her own parents? Audrey was completely confused by this information. She continued to reason. If the trauma put her in a coma, then an altered state of behavior is somewhat understandable. A few can endure a month without consciousness. She may have forgotten not only her family members, but even her own name. It seemed that Audrey had found an explanation for the child's strange behavior, albeit too late. But how do I explain her eyes and black tears? If she came out of such a coma, why was why was she at home and not rehabilitation? She was discharged a few days ago. The doctors said it was a miracle. She was behaving normally and all her vitals were fine. Her parents... the parents of both girls prayed for them day and night. But I guess miracles just don't happen. Or maybe it's not God who answers prayers, but the devil. I need to ask. About the other girl. What happened to the other girl? Laura's father is the pastor of our Protestant church. His daughter was in the same ward as Tina. Unfortunately, while Tina's parents were crying tears of joy, the doctors declared Laura brain dead. Her father begged for a few more days to say goodbye. I believe they were supposed to take her off of life support this morning. The team members glanced at each other, all thinking the same thing. We're going to visit the other girl in the hospital. Can you arrange a car for us? For a moment, the policeman's eyes lost their focus. Audrey feared that David's boldness would get them taken to the police station after all, but that didn't happen. Yes, of course. We don't have many officers here, but I'll find someone to accompany you. Audrey mentally braced herself for a sad scene. But instead of crushing feeling of impending death, she was greeted by a celebration of life. The second girl had woken up from a 4th-degree coma. Only Mikkel's healing can compare to this miracle. A patient who had been prepared for the morgue not only opened her eyes, but also felt great. The doctor and nurse on duty would have continued to fuss over her and argue about which test to run first, but then they were distracted by Tina arriving by ambulance in critical condition. The overjoyed father stared unblinkingly at his revived child. He literally did not react to any external stimuli. But the sound of the door locking and the room filling with strangers finally brought him to his senses. "Excuse me, but you're not supposed to be in here." "Don't worry, we're just ask you a few questions, and then we'll be on our way." Audrey kept her eyes on the girl sitting on the bed, but the child just smiled blissfully and showed no signs of possession. "Yeah, no. Can we start reciting the prayer now?" David nodded to the child and began his questioning. "Can you tell us how this happened?" If you're reporters, I'll have to call hospital staff." "I'm with the police. If you don't want to answer here, next to your daughter, we can arrange an interrogation at the station." The man immediately gave in. "All right, but I don't know how to answer your question. Laura was supposed to die today, but instead she woke up." "With God's help, huh? I hear you're a pastor." The man turned away in embarrassment and answered evasively. "We prayed with Tina's parents day and night, and their daughter woke up a few days ago. Today my Laura woke up. It's a miracle." Yes. We just came from your friend's house. The miracle, as you call it, killed her parents. She ate them piece by piece until we arrived." The blood drained from the man's face, but not a muscle twitched. He took the uninvited guests aside and spoke in a lower voice. "That's impossible." A girl coming out of a 4th-degree coma without a single hint of brain damage? That's what's impossible. "What do you want?" "To pray for your daughter's soul, so that what happened to Tina's family doesn't happen to you." The man tensed and shook his head as if he sensed something. "You're a pastor, aren't you? Is there a problem with that? Let's start with a prayer for her health. What do you think?" "There will be no prayers within these walls." "Well, that's weird for a pastor to say." David smiled approvingly and raised his voice instead. "So you renounced your faith and as soon as it helped you? Did you promise something to value in exchange for your request being granted, and now you don't want to deal with your benefactor?" "What God asked me for in exchange for my daughter's life is none of your business." "Let me guess, he asked you to renounce your faith." "God doesn't ask for anything. Everything is already his, and he doesn't have make promises for faithful service. He punishes the unfaithful. Whoever you called upon, it wasn't God, and you know it." As Cassio's words, a chill went through the room. There was a pause. The girl's eyes flickered, but the brief spark quickly faded. Does she not want to reveal herself until we leave? "So, what prayer did you recite? Who did you ask to bring your daughter back?" "If I tell you, will you leave us alone?" "You and your daughter, yes." The father accepted this answer, and there was something ominous about David's words that Audrey immediately sensed. Well, he did say his daughter and him. If we exorcise the demon from the girl's body, she'll fall into a coma like Tina. She'll probably die. This is right. That's not his daughter, and I'll have to come to terms with that. Alright, I'll tell you. The man glanced at the frowning daughter and sighed heavily. Tina's parents were archaeologists. They were conducting excavations in our village. They weren't believers, but during the month we spent in the ward beside our daughters, they found faith. And then lost it again. Despair oozed from every word the man spoken and wasn't going away. It was as if he feared his daughter would slip back into the oblivious sleep at any moment. That kind of hopelessness chilled to the bone. When the doctors told us to prepare for the worst, something inside all of us broke. As if we hadn't already been in here, in hell all along. As if these trials were just beginning. And then Tina's parents said something they'd had enough of praying. And they brought me a clay tablet.
Daddy?
What is it, my dear? The girl looked shyly at David and beckoning to her father with a thin hand.
I don't feel well. It's hard to breathe.
The father forgot about everyone else in the room. He rushed to the door, but Cassio blocked his way. Where is the tablet?
Daddy.
Fear of losing his daughter again clouded the man's vision. He attempted to push Cassio aside, failed. And he lunged at Cassio with his fists. We need to call the doctors. First, the tablet. As if provoked her father, the girl let out a long, hoarse breath. Cassio blocked the father's next blow by simply tightening his grip around the man's throat. Now both father and daughter were wheezing. This has got to stop. Calm down. Don't scare your child. Laura isn't dying. Look at her oxygen levels. They're fine. Come on, look at her vitals. Audrey's voice made the man turn around. Indeed, all the monitors showed normal vitals. Give us the damned tablet and I'll fetch the doctors myself.
Please call someone for help.
Instead of continuing to rush for the exit, the father suddenly gave in. It's in my bag on the chair. Now can I go? The need for doctors abruptly vanished. Laura jumped off the bed and scurried towards the chair on all fours. The tubes connected to her body by catheters stretched. The needles tore at her veins. The girl didn't seem to care. The room filled with anxious beeping of machines, seeking their now disconnected patient. The father froze at the door, stunned by her behavior. Phil was quicker. She grabbed the bag and jumped aside.
You were a bitch, and you're still one. Do you enjoy hurting others, Phil? Do you want to feel the pain yourself?
Try me. Phil threw the bag to David. Then she leaned forward slightly and assumed a fighting stance.
I'm not going to fight you. I'll just tell you something about your home.
Don't bother.
No, it's you who needn't bother. Your home has long since burned to ashes.
You're lying.
Oh no, I'm not. You're fighting here for nothing but ashes in your teeth, your corpses under your feet.
The girl laughed and crawled back onto the bed. She stared at Phil with undisguised glee. That's nonsense, Phil.
Shut up. What's the last time you were home? A lot has changed.
How does she know her name? Have they exorcised demons here before? Phil's face contorted with a kind of harrowing despair that only comes when hope dies within someone. When there are no tears left, only absolute emptiness and helplessness. Her usual upright shoulders suddenly slumped and her arms hung limply at her sides.
Poor little Felonia. Ask your bosses. If they were so noble, did they leave you a single grave with a name? Or did they pile them all into a mass grave, slaughtering them like rats?
Belle's gaze was detached. It rested on David and on Cassiel as if looking for support. She tried to say something, but no sound came out. Pull yourself together, Fel.
Yes! Pull yourself together, Felonia. Be loyal, submissive. Maybe they'll throw you their bones, so you can cry over them to your heart's content and bury them.
Fel staggered and turned and left the ward. Audrey's first impulse was to follow her, but she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. The father was taking advantage of the confusion. He was trying to press the staff call button. Stop him. Audrey rushed to intercept him. She nearly caught his hand and looked into his eyes. Don't. That's not your daughter anymore. Do you understand? The man broke free and put his hand on his chest. He clutched his sweater as if to soothe the pain in his heart. How is she not, huh? Do you think I wouldn't recognize my own child? Dude, that's a meatbag. Audrey would like to have explained everything to him, but she didn't really understand what was going on either.
Daddy, make them leave.
The father ignored his daughter's strange behavior. He clung desperately to the past, a time that could never be restored. What do you want? What more do I have to do to get you to leave us alone? Did your friends ever tell you where they got this thing? David paid no attention to what was happening around him. He studied the ancient artifact, which had strange symbols on it. No. What a shame. Well, at least now we know your daughter's new name and can perform the exorcism. And what will happen after your exorcism? Your daughter will become who she was. As she was before you read the words on the tablet. Just an hour ago, Audrey was ready to swear that she would never see anything more horrible than the sight of two dead, mutilated parents. But she was wrong. It was so much difficult to see a living parent who couldn't bear to part with his child. Please, leave us be. Tears welled up in the man's eyes. He didn't know which one of them was in charge, so he addressed all of them. His voice trembled with despair. It was the voice of a man who knew that his entire life depended on someone else's decision. I have no one left but Laura. If her condition returns, she'll die. Please, if you have a heart, don't take mine away. The man received no response. He fell to his knees. I'll take her and leave you. You'll never see us again. She won't harm anyone, I swear. There was no point in explaining to him that the creature in the hospital bed wasn't his daughter. He already knew, and he didn't care. God has taken so much from me, my wife, my son. I'm tired of proving my devotion, my love. There's nothing left in me. Let the devil fill the void. I don't care. I keep living with this hole in my chest. You have to let her go.
He doesn't have to do anything. It's easy to give advice like that when you have no one.
The demon openly mocked the man's grief. She tried to bring even more pain into the room. Enough. I don't need your permission. One way or another, I will recite these words. Laura's eyes become shrouded in a veil of dark like Tina's had.
Go ahead, recite them. I hope your tongue falls off. It's because of you that we're all stuck in this fifth pit. Ruling. Cowardly wretch.
Small vial gleamed in David's hand. The girl's amusement vanished, her face twisted in genuine primal fear. It's a good yell. I like it. I man. Yes. The time, the demon didn't stay put. David spoke the first words in a language Audrey was unfamiliar with. As soon as they did, Laura pounced on him. Oh, you look fun. Oh, truly, you look fun. The frail body, weakened by the coma, proved surprisingly strong. A heavy metal bedside table flew into the wall near Audrey's head with a deafening crash. David stumbled. He glanced to the side to make sure Audrey was okay. Audrey, go into the hall. Make sure no one enters the room. The meaning of his words didn't reach her immediately. All thoughts were occupied with trying to comprehend what was happening. What was happening to the ward just didn't make sense. Laura was choking on black water, screaming. Above her, a shadowy figure grew and spread. Arms sprouted from it and reached out to strangle David. There were more and more of them. The room was slowly being consumed by darkness. It drifted across the floor in a murky haze, spreading over the walls. Through the darkness, Audrey saw terrifying, unblinking red eyes staring at her. Audrey was brought back to the reality of a quiet prayer. The girl's father had begun to whisper it. It kept them both from sinking into the abyss of madness. It allowed Audrey to tear her gaze away from the nightmare and break free. In the corridor, she expected to see a crowd drawn by the noise. But the half-emptied hospital remained indifferent to the drama. All of its attention was focused elsewhere, somewhere in the ICU. Tina was dying. Audrey slid to the floor, leaned her back against the door. She felt like she was underwater again as she sought refuge from the heart-wrenching, animalistic howling. The only prayer whispered by the girl's father echoed in her mind. Without realizing it, she began to utter the long-forgotten words herself. She sunk deeper and deeper underwater. Images of her parents flashed before her eyes. For the first time, Audrey prayed for the repose of their souls as well. But as soon as the sounds behind the door faded to a whisper, Audrey resurfaced. No matter how hard she was being pulled down, a ray of hope still shone through. It guided her to the exit. This too will pass. All this will definitely pass. Audrey found Fell on a bench near the hospital entrance. She was lost, alone, trembling faintly. She hugged herself in a futile attempt to get warm. Does she need company right now? Yes. Audrey approached Fell cautiously, as if too afraid to startle her. Audrey didn't ask for permission. She just sat down on the bench. I'll just sit here and I won't burden her with questions. Dawn was breaking in the distance. The first timid rays of the rising sun stretched across the horizon in a golden line. They drove away the darkness. Audrey thought about how night is always followed by day. She hoped that life would be the same. Hard times will eventually end, and a new life will begin. Audrey was exhausted by the darkness. She was eager to let the light in. For the first time in her life, she wanted to be filled to the brim with it. She allowed herself to absorb hope just to avoid recalling the black emptiness of the possessed girls. I'm so tired, Audrey. Her hoarse voice brought Audrey back to reality. I want to go home. To my family. For some reason, Fell's words didn't come as a surprise. It was as if Audrey had always known. She pieced this knowledge together just by working alongside the perpetually sullen woman. That's why she can't leave Astrea, even though she hates it so much. Now I don't even know if they're alive. Maybe they're all gone, and my home really is nothing but ashes and graves. She dropped her head into her hands and spoke in a lifeless, hollow voice. But I still have to be there, wherever they are. Even if it means lying in the ground next to them. Audrey was sure that even if she knew exactly what had happened to Fell, she still wouldn't have found the right words. All her words had been left behind in the hospital room. Any question I asked now would be out of place, and no words can bring her comfort. Audrey twisted her fingers in her lap. She looked at Fell's hands, which hid her moment of weakness. At her back, bent under the weight of all the problems piled upon her. Kind of sad by 50 diamonds, but I'm gonna do it. Audrey wanted to pull Fell close, but didn't dare to. She placed her hand gently on Fel's back, stroking it softly, almost weightlessly. She tried to pour everything into that touch, all of her thoughts, all of her desire to ease Fel's pain. I'm so sorry, Fel. So sorry that all of this is happening to you. Fel didn't immediately respond to Audrey's touch, but eventually she did. She raised her head and gazed at Audrey with a look of unspeakable sadness. I gotten accustomed to showing her tears to others. She quickly looked away. She was embarrassed, miserable at that moment. She seemed like a fragile creature that needed to be protected from the world. Audrey moved her hand up higher to Fel's shoulder blades and called to her. Fel. Unable to bear it, Fel turned away. She did so with a defiance. It was as if weakness was something disgusting, something that made her unworthy. It's all right. I'm here. Fel saw Audrey's willingness to accept her as she was, and she finally gave in. She suddenly leaned into Audrey, hiding her weakness on the evaluator's shoulders. Audrey opened her arms to her. She held Fel close. She felt her thin fingers clinking to her, gripping the fabric of her clothing. Fel's ragged, bright breathing was warm against her neck. Audrey stroked the officer's hair, trying to calm her. Everything will be all right. Everything will be all right. Fel's breathing gradually evened out. Her hands rested on Audrey's back. Audrey wanted to say something comforting. Something more substantial than empty promises about life's silver linings. Audrey knew it was Laura's words that had upset Fel. She took a chance. I don't know much about demons, but can they really be trusted? In response to her words of comfort, Fel pulled away. She looked at the evaluator with a completely different, stern gaze. You're right, Audrey. Demons can't be trusted. And I'm sorry about the scene. Audrey didn't understand the reason for Fel's sudden change. She looked at the officer's face in confusion. Fel untangled herself from Audrey's arms and stood up. She wiped away the dried trails of her tears. Thank you for supporting me, but it really wasn't necessary. Whatever Fel was thinking were now on her thoughts, and they seemed to be causing her pain. Fel clenched her fist, blinked away the remnants of tenderness. Her face returned to its usual scowl. I would give anything to leave this place. I hate it here. And I should have no reason to stay. Audrey could still feel the warmth of Fel's body on her arms, but there was ice in her eyes. Audrey nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat and trying to keep a neutral expression. Why do her words hurt me at all? This time it was the evaluator who had to turn away to hide her feelings. Fel clenched her jaw, but remains steadfast. This will be better for everyone. Fel is afraid of her emerging feelings for you, but there is no way to uproot them. Only David and Cassiel emerged from the hospital. Audrey didn't want to ask what happened to the girl's father. She was certain that 3 people had died in the hospital that night. Everyone seemed exhausted. Even the usually upbeat David looked subdued. Are you ready to head back? The women nodded silently and trudged away from the hospital. They decided not to hitch a ride. Instead, they opted for a walk to shake off the lingering heaviness of the night's events. The cat, what should I say? As they passed the first girl's house, the group slowed involuntarily. Audrey remembered Tina's words and the way she had spoken about David, as if she knew him well. Maybe I should ask him about how that's possible. Audrey approached David and deliberately slowed her pace. David immediately sensed that she had a question for him and slowed down as well. He glanced at the evaluator and put a friendly expression on his tired face. I won't even ask if you're alright. We all went through a lot today. Audrey promised that she wouldn't bother him for too long, but she bit her lip apologetically. It seemed like the demon knew you. Just in case, she clarified. Knew you better than the rest of us. He couldn't keep the friendliness on his face. David winced painfully at her words. Sorry, I didn't mean, I thought you were going to ask if what you saw today was real. Or suggest that we all check into Goodlum. Or at least ask where demons come from. David interrupted her and spoke more gently. No, I'm really glad you're starting to get the hang of things. I'm glad you're not tearing your hair out over what you saw. It's just that I wasn't prepared for this particular conversation, sorry. He didn't want to make an already difficult day even more complicated. Audrey forced a smile. She tried to steer away from the subject she had brought up. Then, tell me where demons come from. He smiled gratefully. He stared at the backs of their companions walking ahead of them with an enigmatic look in their eyes. The demon you encountered today is different from most. He can grant wishes. So all the stories about deals with the devil are just myths? Well, most of them are probably myths. It's not easy to summon a demon like that. Just wanting to sell your soul isn't enough. You need to say the exact words and have the demon's sigil, and of course you have to interest him. You have to offer him of something of real value. The girl's parents offered their souls in exchange for a chance to see life in their daughter's eyes. The heaviness that had settled in Audrey's soul rose again, making her nauseous. But he didn't return their daughters to them, he tricked them. You have to be precise when making wishes, especially when your soul is at stake. She digested the information as she continued her questioning. So, how often do you have to deal with them? This time, David's answer was evasive. Our agency, not very often. But you more often? Fell and Cassiel had noticed their absence and slowed down. They gave them a chance to catch up. But Audrey felt a strong desire to stay with David a little longer. He's so calm, he could be more than a friend to me. Audrey's eyes unintentionally lingered on his profile. It hurts to see him so down. She desperately wanted to wipe the unfamiliar sadness from his face. She wanted to cover his skin with kisses, to hold all of his heavy thoughts for him. To bury herself in his embrace, melt into the peace he always gave her. David felt her gaze and turned. Whatever happens, Audrey, we can handle it. Do you believe me? She nodded. She replied sincerely, trying to put all of her feelings into her answer. I believe you, David. David is willing to overcome any obstacle for you. The village of astonishing beauty remained behind them, but none of them would ever want to go back. Its magical nature hid an ugliness that had touched them and left stains that wouldn't be washed away. The journey home was oppressively silent, but like any journey home, it felt much shorter to Audrey. After some time. That's specific. Audrey decided to freshen up, at least in appearance, before reporting to her superiors. She took a quick shower and changed her clothes. Diamond time, deliberately simplistic, tender affection, home comfort, allure, enticing patterns, get everything. Hey look, it's free, because thank God they're using a dress thing for free right now. Let me take a look here to see which specific one out of everything we'll get. Alright, so everything's been added to our wardrobe. Home comfort. I'll do allure. Enticing patterns. Yeah, allure's fine. Now for my hair. Reserved. Shy. Bold. Confident. Get everything. That's right. Gonna take advantage of this bad boy while it lasts. All options have been added to your wardrobe. Alright, let's take a look at your hairstyles, shall we? Reserved. I'm feeling the confident dark one. Yeah, let's go with that one. Audrey wondered who exactly she would have to report to now. She decided to run through all the possibilities in her head just in case. Somnus and Furious must be expecting me to crawl to them in tears, to beg them not to give me assignments like that again. This new world truly frightened her, but she wasn't going to give up her job. That's not happening. Audrey assumed everyone would go to the debriefing together, but she didn't see any of the others outside of Mikkel's office. She didn't even find anyone inside either. They're all vanished again. The living room, empty. So was the kitchen. They can't all be gathered in a bedroom, can they? And it didn't take me that long to get dressed for the meeting, so it can't be over yet. She listened carefully. She was trying to determine if there was anyone else in this house. The only sound came from the farthest door in the hallway. A single, dull thud, as if something not very heavy had fallen to the floor. No one has shown me this room. Maybe this is the office of our new bosses. Audrey received no response to her knock. She opened the door and peered in cautiously. After making sure it wasn't someone's bedroom, she stepped inside. It could have passed for a library, but the shelves of the numerous cabinets held not just books, but various trinkets. Stones, figurines, jewelry, even paintings. She walked past the shelves. She tried to find the source of the noise, but some fallen object, but to no avail. It's weird, I definitely heard something. An unusual box caught her attention. It seemed to glow somewhat. It shimmered and beckoned. Without thinking, she reached for it, but when she heard a familiar voice, she immediately yanked her hand away. You shouldn't touch that, Audrey. Raphael. It felt like she hadn't seen him in ages. The fear she once felt towards him had dulled, but his eyes still seemed foreign to her. Or perhaps it was his unusual behavior that unsettled her. He seemed afraid of her, too. He watched her warily and kept his distance. The gap between them felt physical. Audrey wasn't sure she wanted to cross it. It seemed safer on this side. I ended up here on accident and I heard a noise. This is our storage room for special occasions and items. Are these the items you appraise? Exactly. The gentle, shy smile relaxed his tense muscles. You remembered. He ran his fingers along the shelf and wiped away the dust that clung to it. Audrey, I know it's unlikely that I could forbid you anything. You really shouldn't touch anything in here. Are these items cursed? Some are, but not all. This room is usually locked, but you managed to catch me when I'm here and it's open. I didn't do it on purpose. I was waiting for someone to open the door for me. I was looking for Mikkel, or Furious, or Somnus. The box glowed brighter. Raphael motioned for her to follow him. He led her away from the tempting object. They went to talk to Phil. They won't be back for a while. You can rest today. She sighed with relief. She couldn't help but smile. The last thing she wanted to do was discuss what had happened on the assignment. Instead, she desperately wanted to collapse in a bed. But despite the obvious end of the conversation, she didn't move. There was one question swirling around in her mind, but she didn't have the courage to ask it out loud. Raphael seemed to feel the same way, and he begun first. Audrey, the night in your friend's village. You were through a great ordeal. I know. Mikkel told me everything. The speech he had obviously prepared lost its purpose. He hesitated. You saved me. Thank you. The gratitude didn't seem to bring him any comfort. It's a shame I don't remember that moment. Mikkel, said it was impressive. Whether out of modesty or something else, he averted his eyes. Would you want your memory back? Would you like to remember everything that happened that night? To relive the horror he described, do I want that? Yes. It's my memory, after all. Whatever it is, I need to know. Even if it means losing sleep over it. That's a very bold statement. You're not afraid to face the past. That's commendable. Honestly, it's hard to believe what they say happened there. Even the news articles about the village feel unreal to me. And I have so many questions for you, but when I try to formulate them, they all turn into one very blunt and stupid question. You want to know who I am? Well, now I know that Mikhail is a healer, and that there are malicious demons in the world that you can sell your soul to, and if I'm not in the middle of a psychotic episode or currently confined in Goodlam Ward, you could be anyone. It seemed that the gap between them had finally closed. You're not having an episode. Audrey glanced back at the glowing box without meaning to. Let me distract you from that accursed trinket. Let's pick something beautiful and safe for you. Come on. Raphael neared the door and then stopped at a small jewelry display. I have personally checked everything here. No curses. Choose something for yourself. She immediately forgot about the glowing box, dazzled by the stunning beauty of the various pieces. Wow. How do I choose just one? Let me guess there's going to be an option to choose all of them. No, okay, hold on. Gold. Precious stuff. Listen, is it? Hold on, is it the thing on her wrist? Hold on. Yes. So, the gold one, or well, the precious stone one looks weird. It looks like it goes through our wrist. Silver. You can't choose just more than one. Alright, fine. Gold, precious stones, silver seems to be the free option. I'll go with precious stones. I'm a person who likes gemstones. Especially for their various ways of healing and energy and focus and yada yada yada. Really? Can I? Raphael followed her gaze and deftly picked up the bracelet. May I? His outstretched hand trembled, his eyes filled with hope. Like he's expecting some kind of trick from me. Instead of agreeing verbally, Audrey extended her hand in response. He fastened the bracelets and then gently squeezed her wrist for a moment. He also let go almost immediately. Still, Audrey could barely hold back a question. What was that about? Your memory will return to you, Audrey. Slowly, but it will. I'll be waiting. Audrey didn't know if she would ever be able to enter this room again, so she took one last look around. Every object held a mystery. Each had an assignment associated with it. I imagine there are so many incredible stories stored here. She didn't want to distract Raphael from his work, but more than that, she wanted to stay a little longer. I can steal just a little more time today. Since I'm free for the day, maybe I could help you with something? To her surprise, he didn't refuse. I'm almost done. You can watch if you like. But for heaven's sake, don't touch anything. All right? All right. Raphael sat down at the table. He gestured for her to sit across from him. He leaned over a black crystal. Now's the perfect time to ask him my questions. Oh, Lord, diamonds. Whew, expensive. Ask about the items in the room, ask about the crystal he's holding, suggest grabbing a bite to eat, say goodbye. First question. Audrey waited for Raphael to look up and then blurted out. Tell me about the items you keep here. Raphael set the crystal aside and paused. He seemed to be considering what he could tell her. Maybe there's something that could make me invulnerable. I could really use that, you know. With your new bosses and their assignment. Raphael forced a smile and shook his head. Phil's armory at the police station would probably be more helpful. Here, you're more likely to meet a random death than immortality. Audrey tried to avoid the dark, direction that conversation was taking, she changed the subject. Maybe there's something that can make me young and beautiful then. This time he smiled genuinely. I don't think you really need anything like that, Audrey. And I doubt you'll need it in the long run. But if I ever do, could you help me? I'm afraid anything I might find in here would be something that will make you age faster. She grimaced and folded her hands in her lap. You should have led with that. No, I'm definitely not touching anything. There is something I might be able to give you. He rummaged around in a drawer and pulled out a small burlap pouch. He poured some powder into his hand, and it looked like a golden dust. This is pollen from a unique tree. If you inhale it, all of your negative thoughts will leave you for a while. Oh my god, can I have some of that, please? Audrey wasn't exactly thrilled by his words. Is this some kind of ground-up drug? Offended, he started to put the powder back. She quickly apologized. No, sorry, it was a bad joke. A clear head is exactly what I need right now. Audrey closed her eyes and prepared to breathe it in. A light puff was enough to send tiny sparks dancing in the air and tickling her nostrils. In an instant, the dusty office was transformed into a magical, wondrous place. The scent she inhaled was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She was overwhelmed by a freshness that cleared her mind, made her feel light and relaxed. All of her fears suddenly evaporated, and it was like they had never existed. It was as if there was no past to mourn, no future to worry about. Only the present. Lost in the magnificent feeling, Audrey could barely find the strength to return to reality. My god, what is this pollen? You could make a fortune with it. I'm afraid my meager supply will only last for a few more inhalations. Do you spray this powder around the house? The smile faded from his face. What makes you think that? Audrey waved away the sudden thought. Relaxed, she leaned back in her chair. Just a thought. Never mind. You can still talk to Raphael. Now's the perfect time to ask my questions. Alright, so we did the item in the room. Ask about the crystal he's holding. Or was, since technically he put it down. Ooh, okay, that's kind of badass. I wanted it. I want it. Like a bunch of blinking eyes that constantly change color and stuff. That's wicked. What does this crystal do? The black, murky surface of the mineral gleamed playfully, as if in response to her curiosity. It contains a dark entity. A curse? More like a creature. Audrey involuntarily remembered the vial in David's hands. It frightened the demon that possessed Laura and Tina. Is there a demon in there? The question surprised Raphael so much that Audrey thought she had gone too far. You don't believe in demons? I thought everyone in this house believed in them. No, it's not that. It's just strange to hear you talk about it so casually. As if you really believe it. Well, if I start thinking about everything around me as part of a conspiracy, I think I'll wind up in Goodlum much faster. And anyways, my parents taught me all through my childhood that heaven and hell exist. Angels, demons. I hope that I'll encounter more of the former than the latter. He smiled and looked at her with a genuine curiosity. Would you like to meet an angel? Oh, I'd love to. I have a lot of questions for those white-winged beings. And what would you say to an angel if you had the chance? There was so many questions that Audrey didn't even know where to begin. She decided to start with one that had troubled her all of her life. I'd ask angels why they allowed my father's church to be built. Why they let people hide behind their names to do evil. Why no one helped the children who prayed to them for help every day. I'd ask what angels are for. Because I personally don't get it. Wow, that is deep. That is deep. Audrey almost immediately regretted this unnecessary confession. Feeling guilty, she fell silent. She tried to understand why she allowed herself to behave this way. Why now, of all times? Might be that pollen. I'm sorry, Audrey. I really am. Audrey held up her hands and tried to stop him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't dump this on you. By the way, meeting a demon, if that's really what it was, wasn't exactly pleasant either. Though, to be honest, I had far fewer questions for him. It's almost funny. It's almost like accepting the dark side automatically frees you from any complaints. Like, I think the world is much more complicated than that, Audrey. And there's no obvious good or absolute evil in it. Except for the beast. You do consider it absolute evil, don't you? He tightened his grip on the crystal nervously, as if caught in a lie, and he averted his gaze. For a moment she thought she saw a flicker, and then fade behind that smooth surface. I think I've had enough demon talk for one day. Raphael nodded and set the crystal aside. I couldn't agree more. Suggest grabbing a bite to eat. Oh, we have tea. He just popped it out of nowhere. Just bam! Audrey watched Raphael's methodical work. She felt her eyelids grow heavy. Wanting to stay longer, she began to consider possible options. Maybe I could get you some coffee? Are you hungry? Raphael immediately saw her true motives. He didn't humor her. Instead, he said plainly, Audrey, if you're getting tired, go rest. I'll finish up here myself. I'll stay a little longer. I like it here. He sighed, stood up, and went to the window. It was only then that Audrey noticed a small teapot and a lone cup sitting there. Does he always work alone? A few minutes later, there was a fragrant cup of tea in front of her. What about you? Help yourself, Audrey. I will continue to enjoy your company. The drink was delicious, but it didn't invigorate her at all. Audrey decided to wake herself up with a question. Has anything terrible ever happened here? Raphael's answer managed to shake her up a bit. It could have happened today. That box you were so eager to touch could have shattered you into tiny particles, and not put you back together again. My god, are you serious? Quite. Then why do you keep such a terrible item around? Well, it's actually useful, and it's not dangerous to everyone. Not to you, of course. Of course. I think the only one in this house we don't know what to expect from is you. Raphael smiled and turned the conversation into a joke. She relaxed again. I bet he's just scaring me to make sure I don't touch anything here. After today, do you really want to believe that? Could be an infinity stone for all you know. I'm just saying goodbye, because we did everything. The exhalation had been building up finally, overcame her curiosity. Exhaustion, sorry. Blah, blah, brain. Audrey didn't want Raphael to have to carry her sleepy self, so she got up to leave. It was good to see you, Raphael. Instead of a friendly farewell, she heard a sudden request. Audrey, promise me something. I swear I won't touch any of your artifacts. Excellent, but promise me something else, too. She fought off sleep with the last of her strength and listened intently. When your memory returns, find the strength to speak to me. I promise. As she left the room, Audrey was filled with a strange foreboding. But the exhaustion of the sleepless night pushed the heavy feeling aside and urged her upstairs. Audrey almost undressed as she walked. Then she dove under the blanket. She closed her eyes and instantly fell into a deep sleep. It was so sweet and long-awaited that a smile settled on her face. But it was quickly turned into a grimace of irritation, an annoying knocking dared to drag her out of her Morpheus realm. Oh, if it's that flying fox again, I'll strangle it with my bare hands. Audrey angrily threw the blanket and jumped out of bed. The unfamiliar harsh cold of the floor burned her bare feet. She hissed, climbed back onto the mattress. Did I sleep until winter? The knocking came again. She listened. The wooden cane slowly emerged from the shadows. It tapped dully on the floor as it moved further into view. Then a hand appeared, followed by its owner. This can't be happening. Was the person in the room? Oh my lord, and what the actual Christ. Audrey. Philip Moore moved through the room like a ghost. Audrey held her breath and watched his every move. Where are you, Audrey? Give me a clue. Come on. Whimper. Whine. I'm dreaming. This is a dream. Audrey didn't want to test how real her nighttime visitor was. She bolted from the bedroom. But when she realized that the door was locked, she gave herself away with a piercing scream. Oh, my dear. It's just you and me here. Moore followed her voice. He reached out for her with his free hand. Someone help! Scream. Scream louder. Try harder. The cane fell to the floor and both his hands wrapped around her neck. They squeezed the last bit of oxygen from her lungs. She had wasted it on a futile cry for help. Blood rushed to her head and pounded painfully in her ears. This is a dream. This is a dream. But the dream felt so real and the pain was so vivid. Come on, Audrey. Open your eyes. Open your eyes while you still have them. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. I love this book. I first and foremost 4 faith, 0 skepticism, 4 reputation, diamonds, hold on. Alright, so long story short, we went and got our diamonds. So, with that being said, thank you all for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. So, aside from that, consider supporting the channel. But, and if you ever need to know how to support the channel, feel free to ask and I'll let you know. But aside from that, wow. So, I feel like I'm going to make a confession here. Okay? Well, first I'm going to ask you a question. And then I want you to pause right after this question. Let me know in the comment section. Don't feel shy. Don't feel hesitant. Let me know. But I would like to ask you, how was my reading of this? So, for instance, the girls, I tried to, like, I feel like this app and these books, these chapters, really open up my ability to do things. So, again, how was my voicing in this reading? The voices, the reading. Okay, you can pause now and answer the question. Now, in case you've unpaused or didn't give a shit, and you just want to hear me continue talking, I feel like I gave more than I usually give in, say, choices. Right? I'm kind of proud of myself in what I gave in this chapter. The little girl's voices, more, even fell, going from the normal, hi, how are you, and talking like this, to, giving, like, actually taking her voice and giving it emotion, such as, crying, and doing things like that. I really am proud of myself because it was like, you're acting, right? You're acting on a stage, or you're acting in a movie or TV show. And I'm like, oh man, I really feel like I did good. So let me know, please, again, especially if you're like, no, I didn't pause, I didn't let me know. Let me know your thoughts if you seriously did not know, or didn't pause to let me know. Let me know. I seriously value your feedback above all else, because this is like you auditioning for a job. even though the channel is my job and I already have it, but I like criticism. I like, hey man, you did actually really good. I was impressed. I not sucked. I mute you. Something, anything. Really, seriously. Again, I'm also the only person, and I take pride in this especially. I'm the only person out of 8 billion people on this planet that are doing this. That are sitting here reading to you, but also doing voicing and trying to put something more into what I consider is good writing. But I'm trying to add more to it. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode. Peace out.